clashes happening right now between Hezbollah terrorists and IDF soldiers. The iconic Beaufort Castle has been captured by the IDF. Dramatic photos showing the Israeli flag atop this historic landmark symbolizing Israel's long and costly battle in southern Lebanon that goes back several decades. Today we'll have an in-depth analysis by ILTV's David Matlin on this story, but first, a recap of all of the latest escalations in the fighting by ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
הלילה הלוחמים הגיבורים שלנו כבשו את מוצב הבופור. הם הניפו שם בגאווה את דגל מדינת ישראל ואת דגל חטיבת גולני.
26 years after Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon, the IDF has returned to one of the most symbolic battlefields in its history. The IDF says large forces from the Golani Brigade, Givati Brigade, 7th Armored Brigade, the multi-divisional unit, and other forces crossed the Litani River as part of a broad offensive targeting Hezbollah strongholds north of the border. At the center of the operation is Beaufort Castle, a Crusader-era fortress overlooking southern Lebanon and much of northern Israel. The ridge has long been considered one of the most important strategic positions in the region. The IDF says the operation is designed to remove threats to communities in the Galilee Panhandle and to the town of Metula. Before ground troops moved in, the Israeli Air Force, artillery, and tank forces carried out extensive strikes on Hezbollah positions, weapon sites, and infrastructure. The capture of Beaufort carries enormous historic weight in Israel. The fortress was the site of one of the most famous battles of the 1982 First Lebanon War, when Golani soldiers fought a bloody nighttime assault to seize the stronghold from PLO forces. Afterward, it became an isolated Israeli outpost inside southern Lebanon for 15 years, constantly under attack from Hezbollah. The last Israeli soldiers left Beaufort during the withdrawal from Lebanon in May of 2000. Tonight, more than a quarter century later, Israeli troops are once again holding the strategic ridge as the war against Hezbollah enters a new and far more aggressive phase. The operation is especially significant because it comes in the middle of a U.S.-mediated ceasefire and ongoing direct Israel-Lebanon talks in Washington that was supposed to reduce fighting along the Israel-Lebanon border. Instead, Israel's seizure of the Beaufort Castle signals a dramatic expansion of the campaign against Hezbollah and underscores Jerusalem's determination to push the Iran-backed group farther from the border. For many Israelis, the return to Beaufort is more than a military achievement. It's a powerful reminder that a battlefield once thought to be history has again become a front line in Israel's war for security in the north.
And in Israel, tragedy strikes as amid the fighting in Lebanon, the IDF has announced the death of Staff Sergeant Michael Tyukin, a 21-year-old soldier from Ashkelon serving in the Givati Reconnaissance Unit. Tyukin was killed last night when a Hezbollah explosive drone struck IDF forces operating in southern Lebanon. 4 other soldiers were also lightly wounded in that same attack. Now, the incident highlights the growing threat posed by Hezbollah's low-flying explosive drones, which have become one of the most significant challenges facing IDF forces on the northern front. Tyukin is the 13th Israeli soldier killed since the Lebanon ceasefire took effect. He made Aliyah from Ukraine 6 years ago with his mother and was an only child. May his memory forever be a blessing. And with that, joining me now in studio is ILTV's very own David Matlin to shed some light on this story. Now, David, you have firsthand experience in Lebanon from your time serving there. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of this capture of the Beaufort Castle?
Yeah, it brings a heavy historic narrative. I mean, just first of all, update. I mean, the north is under fire in the last hours as we speak. This has been an ongoing situation. So nothing quiet up there. But look, when you talk about a place like the Beaufort, this is a place where generations, literally generations of regular army combat soldiers served in a series of deeply positioned high points and forts. As was alluded to and mentioned in the report, they were always constantly under fire. The roads were mined, ambushes were routine, and they didn't live inside the fort. I mean, they spent a lot of time outside it as well. This was tough, bloody, and ultimately we withdrew. I mean, this is the painful part of the history around this site, is that we withdrew unilaterally Many saw this as a retreat, as popular as it was in Israel at the time to do this in the year 2000. It left a lot of bad feelings. It left a lot of feelings of retreat, especially among those who had served up there. That what did we, sacrifice so much for and then withdraw? And the border region became less safe almost immediately at that point from the year 2000. By 2002 or so, even in 2001, Hezbollah had encroached directly up to the border where the soldiers had vacated, and cross-border raids and attacks became commonplace, routine. I mean, horrific infiltrations into Israel, attacks on the border, culminating in the 2006 cross-border raid that triggered the war, that triggered the Second Lebanon War.
And you were really there on the ground. You were serving, and you're saying that there were clashes being reported. Were there no foreign forces? Like, where was UNIFIL in this?
Look, UNIFIL has been there. I mean, just to give another little history of this, in the year 2000 when we withdrew, I think there's a couple key points to reiterate for our viewers. Resolution 1310, UN resolution, established the internationally recognized border, the blue line, as it became known. So in other words, Israel withdrew completely to where the UN said, hey, here are the internationally recognized borders. UNIFIL came in here, this United Nations interim force in Lebanon, got a mandate. You have thousands and thousands of foreign troops that are then positioned along the border. And this resolution in the year 2000 called on the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah, to move into these border areas, to take control. Didn't happen. 2006 war ended with Resolution 1701 through the UN, a similar resolution calling on the same thing, Hezbollah to be moved out of this border region, the Lebanese forces to come in. This didn't happen. The UN's been here all along. November 2024, I should take us to that point here, where this ceasefire that stipulated that the Lebanese armed forces would take control of the border region again, along with the UN. None of these things resulted in a safer border region. If anything, Hezbollah entrenched their positions. We saw just some 7-8 years ago, the 6 cross-border tunnels bore through the limestone that Hezbollah had created to cross into country. And on top of that, now the current ceasefire arrangement from April 17th, initially 10 days, extended for 45 days. There's been 13 dead Israeli soldiers during that time. So this is tragic, but I also want to add this is by design. There's a reason that the IDF is in there to incur these losses, to take that danger away from the home front, which was so vulnerable, so in the line of fire for Hezbollah. So taking on the claims that if we only stopped fighting and withdrew at this point, that things would somehow be okay. There's no way, no one in Israel is buying that anymore. The presence up there is honestly deemed more important than ever.
Right. And so it's really a full circle closing moment, I guess one would say. David, thank you so much for that analysis.
Sure.
And moving on now to the Iranian front, Israeli officials are closely watching as President Donald Trump continues to delay his final decision regarding the proposed agreement with the Islamic regime in Iran. Trump is not taking any risks as he is now demanding amendments. Now, according to reports from Washington, Trump used the dramatic Friday meeting in the White House Situation Room to demand changes to the draft memorandum of understandings with particular focus on the future of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. The president is also seeking previous recognitions regarding shipping control through the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. officials say Trump wants a deal, but is also interested in signaling on stronger guarantees before signing off. Negotiations are expected to continue in the coming days, with Washington maintaining that the regime must never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. The most recent comments coming from the President Trump administration come from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth.
So Iran knows very, very clearly what our expectations are, and that's on the negotiating team to deliver. They're coming in our direction. The talks have been productive. I think they know where it needs to go, and I'm quite confident with our president, who makes nothing but great deals, that ultimately it'll be something he's proud to defend, that ensures that Iran, which everyone knows should not have a nuclear weapon, never does. Ultimately, like I said, any deal that the president is willing to make, he's only going to make it if he believes it's a great deal for our country and the security of the world.
And so joining me now to discuss all of these latest developments is retired Colonel Rich Outzen, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Rich, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Always good to be with you.
So over the weekend, Trump convened the Situation Room in the White House in quite a dramatic move that actually led many to believe that military escalation could be imminent. But that's not exactly what transpired. Is it not odd to you to convene the Situation Room just to discuss the draft understandings? Is there maybe a bigger picture here at play?
Absolutely. Well, of course, most people remember, most observers remember, for instance, the pictures that came out after the operation to capture or kill Osama bin Laden, the pictures from the White House Situation Room with all of the key national staff, the president and so forth. So the optics and sort of the symbolism of announcing ahead of time that there's going to be that sort of a meeting and discussing options is one method to kind of raise the temperature a little bit on Tehran. I don't think it's odd at all that Trump is doing this. Trump is a negotiator, a skilled negotiator. And the Iranians, as we've all seen before, are also very skilled negotiators. They're playing a waiting game. I think Trump's essential logic is that the economic and political dynamics ultimately put more pressure on Iran. Iran is trying to buy time. So by saying, well, we're close and we've agreed on some things, but the Americans are frustrating us and we don't really know what to think of their position. That's all sort of bull, if you know what I mean. It's very clear what Trump wants on the denuclearization file and on the Straits of Hormuz. And he's pushing for language changes that will get at that. But everything he can do, every feint, every movement that makes it look like, yes, now we're going to make this hurt a little bit more, is part of this intricate dance of negotiation. And I think the Iranians have out-negotiated just about every previous American president. Trump, while leaving the gun on the table, so to speak, is engaging in that sort of negotiation, hard negotiating. And frankly, I think in the end, this is the best approach.
Yeah, I want to dwell on something that you just mentioned, because Trump is saying that the Iranians want a deal, but the regime themselves, they have also come out and said that time and again, really, that they refuse to accept American terms. So considering how hard Trump has criticized the JCPOA under Barack Obama, do you think that Trump is maybe backing himself into a little bit of a corner where at this point he needs a deal that essentially, makes the regime agree to American terms that they've said they've never do? I mean, what would be different this time in a deal as opposed to previous times?
Well, I was in government at the time that the JCPOA was negotiated. Those people that were skeptical of it were not skeptical so much on the points about the delimitation and inspections and so forth, but about enforcement. And also the fact that the JCPOA, the previous deal with Iran, did not address regional aggression, right? Did not address the ballistic missiles or the use of proxies. It was very narrowly focused, and it was time limited. It basically gave, I think it was 10 or max 20 years of limitation, after which everything was free. So I think Trump will not make the mistake of those types of errors. I think whatever he is going to have a more comprehensive, so it'll address Hormuz as well as the nukes. But also, I think it's not just going to be sort of a trust mechanism. It's going to be one that needs real verification, whether that means the nuclear material, the enriched uranium, goes to a third country or is abandoned altogether. So I think he's been pretty consistent on that. Now, the wild card here, of course, is that he's got elections in the fall, not for the presidency, but for the Congress. And gas prices and other economic news haven't been great in the U.S., so pressure is rising on Trump from his own party. That may back him in. Ultimately, the Iranians can't back him into a compromise deal or something that smells like the JCPOA, but it is possible that the economic and political pressure with November approaching could start to do that.
Right. And, because speaking of political and economic pressure, I do want to talk about the Strait of Hormuz. This is inevitably a major point of contention in the talks. Say the regime is able to sweep the strait and remove all of the mines that they had previously placed, as they said that they would. Surely there's really no way to comprehensively remove that threat. Doesn't that pose a major an issue if the strait were to return to its full capacity of shipping? What would that look like?
Right. Well, the complicated thing about the strait is not so much passage through it. Because with escort and again, some mine clearing and the threat of counterforce, I think Iran can be deterred from active attacks there. But they have a large coastline. And of course, unless you're willing to strike targets on the Iranian mainland, then they're always going to have a potential threat and potential leverage there. I think the negotiating position here for Trump is hard because we don't want to keep, the U.S. naval fleet and forces there to do escort missions and to do deterrence missions ad infinitum. So this has to be nested within whatever deal is negotiated. Now, I will say this, the frozen assets, the $20 billion, this is a pretty powerful tool in the hands of the Trump's negotiators, because leveraging sort of gradual access to that in exchange for better behavior means that they're going to be able to index any relief from sanctions and any release of funds to behavior in Hormuz, as well as on the nuclear file. The Iranian economy, as you know, is sort of a one-trick pony. It's energy focused. The energy has been bad for them, being able to export in terms of oil and gas and so forth, and they've had terrible drought. So there's real economic pressure on the Iranians in the midterm. So the short term, they think they have the cards, but in the long term, the $20 billion and the increasingly dire economic situation means I think the Hormuz issue is solvable within the context of win-win for both sides economically.
All right, well, we're just going to have to follow that closely and wait and see. Rich Outzen, thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving us your analysis.
You're welcome.
In Israel, everything can change in an instant. That's why Hadassah hospitals don't wait for a crisis to prepare. In times of trouble, our hospitals react quickly, rushing units underground, maternity wards, cancer units, ICUs, ensuring our life-changing care continues. Soldiers are saved, civilians healed. But more underground facilities are urgently needed. Advanced operating rooms, fortified recovery spaces, and additional beds. The people of Israel always need to be ready for whatever comes next. Please visit Hadassah.org and give today, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Hadassah. Life-changing.
And Israel is moving toward control of 70% of the Gaza Strip, signaling a major expansion of IDF operations. This as the U.S.-led ceasefire efforts continue to bear no fruit and near complete collapse. We have more from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Prime Minister Netanyahu said the IDF already controls about 60% of Gaza, and he's directed the army to increase that figure as part of the campaign to defeat Hamas. Speaking at a conference in Judea and Samaria, Netanyahu said the next objective is to reach 70%.
אנחנו כרגע לופתים את חמאס, כן? אנחנו עכשיו ב-60% משטח הרצועה, אתם יודעים את זה. היינו ב-50, עברנו ל-60. הדירקטיבה שלי היא לעבור תלכו לפי הסדר. קודם כל 70. בואו נתחיל בזה. לופתים אותם מכל עבר, אנחנו נטפל בשאריות.
Under the U.S.-brokered ceasefire framework reached last year, Israeli forces were expected to operate along a so-called yellow line that left Israel controlling just over half of Gaza. Netanyahu's comments signaled that Israel's moving well beyond those original parameters, reflecting growing frustration in Jerusalem over Hamas's continued ability to operate despite years of military pressure. The announcement comes as Israel continues targeted strikes against Hamas leadership, including the elimination of several senior commanders in recent days. Hamas condemned the plan as an escalation, while some nations expressed concern about the humanitarian impact of expanding Israeli control over the territory. Inside Israel, supporters of the move say the October 7th massacre demonstrated the danger of allowing Hamas to retain territorial control anywhere in Gaza. They argue a larger security zone is necessary to protect Israeli communities and prevent future cross-border attacks. Critics counter that territorial control alone may not deliver a long-term strategic solution, noting that Hamas has continued to regenerate leadership structures even after losing many of its top commanders.
Moving on now, a major diplomatic confrontation is erupting between Israel and the United Nations after UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres placed Israel's security forces, the Israel Defense Forces, on a blacklist of parties accused of conflict-related sexual violence. This move has sparked outrage and overall confusion, with Jerusalem denouncing the move as politically motivated and vowing to cut ties with Guterres' office. More in this report.
Israel has launched a sharp diplomatic rebuke of United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres' decision. The UN report claims it verified 31 cases of alleged sexual violence against Palestinian detainees over the past 3 years. The allegations involve incidents said to have occurred in detention facilities, at checkpoints, and during security operations.
2 new state actors are listed. Firstly, the Israeli Armed and Security Forces, namely the Israel Defense Forces, Israel Prison Service, including the Qatar Special Forces, and the Police Counter-Terrorism Unit, Yamam, are listed on the basis of credible information indicating continued patterns of rape and other forms of sexual violence, with an increase in the number of verified cases this year.
Israel's UN ambassador strongly rejected the accusations, saying it has cooperated with UN officials, provided detailed legal and oversight information, and maintains investigative and disciplinary mechanisms for any credible complaints. Danon said Jerusalem is suspending contact with Guterres' office until a new Secretary General takes office when his term expires at the end of this year.
Step into the story of Israel's heartland with Blessed by Israel, where every purchase connects you to the land, the people, and the promise. Taste the sweetness of the promised land in their delicious honeys, or wear the story of the land close to your heart with the stunning Special Places of the Land necklace. Behind each product is a family, pioneers living in Judea and Samaria, crafting beauty and goodness from the soil of the Bible. When you buy their creations, you're not only receiving something extraordinary, you're investing in Israel's future, helping small businesses thrive and communities grow strong. Join a movement that celebrates faith, resilience, and hope. Visit blessedbyisrael.com and use ILTV's special code BLESSISRAEL, that's BLESSISRAEL, at checkout for 10% off on your first order. Be part of strengthening Israel, one purchase at a time. And our final story for today, a US-based Israeli chef has made culinary history, reaching an incredible and prestigious milestone of receiving a Michelin star. The catch? The restaurant is completely kosher, making it the first ever kosher restaurant to receive this title. Take a listen to some of these celebrations. Mutra, located in North Miami, was founded by Jerusalem-born chef Raz Shabtai and has been open for less than 2 years, but already snagged this tremendous title. Shabtai was seen in an emotional state as the announcement was made. Mutra quickly gained a reputation as one of South Florida's most innovative dining destinations. The Michelin star now places it among the world's top restaurants, specializing in modern Middle Eastern cuisine inspired by Shabtai's Jerusalem roots and family traditions. Mutra now holds a title that no other kosher dining has yet to achieve. The award also adds to the growing global reputation of Israeli chefs who continue to leave their mark on some of the world's most prestigious kitchens. So Mazal Tov to Chef Raz Shabtai and the entire team at Mutra on this historic achievement. And with that, welcome back to ILTV News. I'm Devo Klein, and the ceasefire in Lebanon has almost entirely unraveled, leaving a fallen IDF soldier in the fighting, countless rocket attacks on Israel's north, and intense clashes happening right now between Hezbollah terrorists and IDF soldiers. The iconic Beaufort Castle has been captured by the IDF. Dramatic photos showing the Israeli flag atop this historic landmark, symbolizing Israel's long and costly battle in southern Lebanon that goes back several decades. Today we'll have an in-depth analysis by ILTV's David Matlin on this story, but first, a recap of all of the latest escalations in the fighting by ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
הלילה הלוחמים הגיבורים שלנו כבשו את מוצב הבופור. הם הניפו שם בגאווה את דגל מדינת ישראל ואת דגל חטיבת גולני.
26 years after Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon, the IDF has returned to one of the most symbolic battlefields in its history. The IDF says large forces from the Golani Brigade, Givati Brigade, 7th Armored Brigade, the multi-divisional unit, and other forces crossed the Litani River as part of a broad offensive targeting Hezbollah strongholds north of the border. At the center of the operation is Beaufort Castle, a Crusader-era fortress overlooking southern Lebanon and much of northern Israel. The ridge has long been considered one of the most important strategic positions in the region. The IDF says the operation is designed to remove threats to communities in the Galilee Panhandle and to the town of Metula. Before ground troops moved in, the Israeli Air Force, artillery, and tank forces carried out extensive strikes on Hezbollah positions, weapon sites, and infrastructure. The capture of Beaufort carries enormous historic weight in Israel. The fortress was the site of one of the most famous battles of the 1982 First Lebanon War, when Golani soldiers fought a bloody nighttime assault to seize the stronghold from PLO forces. Afterward, it became an isolated Israeli outpost inside southern Lebanon for 15 years, constantly under attack from Hezbollah. The last Israeli soldiers left Beaufort during the withdrawal from Lebanon in May of 2000. Tonight, more than a quarter century later, Israeli troops are once again holding the strategic ridge as the war against Hezbollah enters a new and far more aggressive phase. The operation is especially significant because it comes in the middle of a U.S.-mediated ceasefire and ongoing direct Israel-Lebanon talks in Washington that was supposed to reduce fighting along the Israel-Lebanon border. Instead, Israel's seizure of the Beaufort Castle signals a dramatic expansion of the campaign against Hezbollah and underscores Jerusalem's determination to push the Iran-backed group farther from the border. For many Israelis, the return to Beaufort is more than a military achievement. It's a powerful reminder that a battlefield once thought to be history has again become a front line in Israel's war for security in the north.
And in Israel,